This is the Drumbrute by Arturia, an entirely analog drum computer and sequencer with some really neat performance capabilities. It has 17 all-analog voices with great control for pitch, decay, level, etc., all of those, and each has an individual trigger output which can be used to trigger Eurorack modular drum modules, which we'll have a look at a little bit later. There's a really awesome filter and all of the controls you might expect to find in a drum machine, including song, bank and pattern modes, accenting, swing, and even controls for randomness, which is really neat. Let's have a look at some of the features. Okay, so let's start off by having a look at some of the voices one by one. An obvious place to start really is the kicks. We've got two of those. The first one has controls for impact and sweep, both affecting the pitch envelope. We have an amplitude decay, going from some quite punchy short kicks to some quite lengthy ones. We also have obviously a pitch control. So it's a really wide sweep on that. Kick 2 is a little bit simpler and it's a little bit softer. And it can almost be used as a sort of like an extra tom without so much punch to it. This one seems to go a little bit lower than the other one. The snare and clap controls are kind of what you'd expect from, you know, various TR style drum machines. We've got the sort of like snare rattle controlled here, and it's almost bandpass type sound. The pitch control, and then the front of the sound. And the clap, although it sounds like a sample, the whole machine is entirely analog, so I think they've done quite nicely with that one. We've got rim shots and claves, which have, as you can see, quite rudimentary controls. Open and closed hi-hats, which are of course in a choke group. We've also got two toms and congas. Additionally, there's a cymbal, which can also be reversed, which is a slightly odd inclusion, but quite useful nonetheless. Lastly, there's maracas and tambourine. And I thought what was quite a nice addition was this zap, which is a sort of almost Simmons tom sound, which is kind of quite useful and really plays on the analog nature of the machine. It's not trying to be an acoustic drum machine like, you know, Linz or Oberheim. So that's really awesome. There is 4 ways of clocking the sequencer. Let's just take the tempo right down. There is an internal clock, and then it can also be clocked via USB, which I've got coming from Ableton. I'll show you how to sort that out later, as well as MIDI. And that's kind of useful because a lot of sound cards, particularly Focusrite sound cards, have a MIDI output. So to save USB ports on MacBooks, etc., I find it quite useful to sometimes use MIDI to clock. And lastly, there is a clock input from Eurorack modular or any other trigger generator of similar voltage. That's kind of cool because obviously within the Eurorack context, there's a whole world of things we can do with modulating clocks and all kind of stuff like that. So that's really awesome. Let's have a look at setting up with Ableton. So when in Ableton, if you head to your preferences, which is Command Comma on a Mac, and you go to the MIDI tab, you'll see all of the MIDI devices associated with the machine. If you look for the output, you need to turn the track on and the sync for the Drumbrute. If you don't turn the sync on, you won't be able to send clock information to it, and you'll just be able to trigger it with standard general MIDI information. Additionally, if you're using a MIDI output, for example on the Scarlett, there is one you can turn the track and sync on for that. In Logic, it's just as simple. If you go to File, Project Settings, Synchronization, and then in the MIDI tab, you can click the destination and select the Drumbrute in the drop-down menu. Sequencing with the Drumbrute is relatively simple. If we put it into step mode, as you can see, it's counting through from 1 to 16 steps, and whichever voice you have selected, we can sequence for that. So if we start off with a kick, we'll do something highly imaginative. And let's move on to the clap. And let's do some hats. We've also got controls for swing and randomness, which I think is a pretty awesome control. That can also just be done to the current track, so if we find something like, let's go for some maracas. And now if we hold current track and turn up that, let's do the same thing for the kick. So lastly, I've plugged the trigger inputs from the output of the Drumbrute into gate inputs on various tip-top audio drum modules, and as you can see, it's triggering it really nicely. I think what is quite awesome about using the Drumbrute as a drum sequencer compared to sequencing within Eurorack is you have much finer control over the precision of the hits. I mean, obviously here you can see there's a sequencer by MFB, which is a TR style sequencer, but doing things like swing is as simple as turning as a dial on the Drumbrute. What's obviously slightly more interesting is that the level and decay of the voices in the Drumbrute actually seem to affect the pulse width of the trigger, which can sometimes lead to some unexpected results. But if you're prepared to accept that, it's kind of interesting from time to time.